Jesus. All right, I want to talk to you guys about something that I see an awful lot of on the internet, you know, sometimes out and about. But when doing there's a hoof clinic I do every month, and we inspect cadavers. So I gather some hooves from the local stockyard. That's what it's called when the animals go to die, or they're dead. They go to the stockyard to be processed. The stockyard manager knows enough that there's quite a few of us even around here, veterinarians, farriers, hoof trimmers, people who are just interested in this particular topic will go and gather up some hooves. And I think actually some people feed them to their dogs and stuff, which is not overly advisable. But anyway, so you can go get them. And within these, within the groups of hooves that I would get, in a few of them, quite a few of them, I would get ones that have, which come with obvious deformities and problems. And I'm able to extract the bones. I'm able to cut these hooves in half, as you can see. And if you're a regular viewer of this channel, if not, check back in the hoof care playlist. But I'll have examples like this where I have dehydrated and cut in half a hoof, and you can see the inside of the hoof and the outside and the bottom, and touch it and see it in very close detail. And so with this abundance of different types of hooves, fronts, backs, different deformities, different problems that we can then sort of examine on the inside, we get these ones that have what's called pedal osteitis. And I've got a great example here that I want to show you guys that I started to show in another video, and I said I'll get to it. I'll get to a little bit more detail. And this one's going to be more of an overview, and I'll get to more detail in another one. But I want to talk about pedal osteitis in horses, as it seems to be pretty common. And I would say that you're generally not going to see this kind of stuff in anything younger than, say, 8 or 9 would be really young, in my opinion. And as they get older, 15 to 20 is when it's going to really start beginning, or even be a long ways along even in some horses that haven't been maintained properly. And anything beyond 20 that has pedal osteitis is usually going to be relatively severe, and the hooves are going to have a lot of trouble growing down correctly, and in turn the horse will be tender, have trouble walking on certain surfaces, will likely have an incorrect toe position and stumble. And in turn the heels could very well be run under and uncared for. So what we're going to do quickly today is take a look at some examples, some very obvious examples of what it looks like from the outside. I've got a capsule here, I've got a bone, so we can see what it looks on the inside and what a normal bone should look like, and how you can kind of recognize that and what it means. So pedal osteitis, the meaning of it is very simple. The pedal bone of the hoof is the coffin bone, or P3 is another name for it. It's the bone that sits inside, right at the bottom of the hoof, inside of the capsule. So here, if we go back to our example here of our hoof, we can see there's some bones on the inside. And if you look, there, I'll try to bring it up close. Hopefully it'll focus. There we go. And so if you can see inside of here, we can see we've got, this is the pedal bone, or P3, or the coffin bone. It's got a bunch of names. Here we've got the navicular bone. Here's P2 and P1, or the short pastern and the long pastern. This is also called the distal sesamoid bone. And there's a couple of proximal ones up this way. And so these bones are, well, they're really important. And when you get a decalcification or an erosion of any of the bones, there's things like ring bone, for one, there's a bunch, but what we want to talk about is pedal osteitis, and pedal osteitis is essentially the decalcification or erosion of the coffin bone. So that bone is in the very bottom of the skeletal structure of the foot. And I've got a really great example, and I imagine that this horse was going through some pretty rough times. So before I show it, I want to show you guys an example of what a good coffin bone will look like. So we'll see if we can get this thing to focus on the coffin bone. Okay, so what we have here is a normal coffin bone. I'm pretty sure it's from a hind foot, but I'm not entirely sure. Shape-wise, it looks like a hind foot, so I don't remember which one I got it out of. So I'm just going to try to get the camera to avoid my face and concentrate on the bone. So the coffin bone, in this case, this coffin bone looks very smooth, very smooth. It's got a decent shape on the front. It's not, you know, it's a little bit flat on this front edge, but not too bad. It's got some decent concavity, if you can see that. Sort of rotate that around like so. And you can see it's got there's some concavity to it, okay? And it's smooth. So this is what would be a healthy coffin bone, I would think. It's quite healthy. Pedal osteitis is, it may shock you when you see this. It's going to, it shocks me when I see it every time. But this is what a bone that has severe, quite severe pedal osteitis. So you can see right off the bat, it is quite, you know, looks like Swiss cheese, essentially. A lot of holes, a lot of decalcification. The bone has eroded away on these edges. This horse is probably a little bit older as well, so that's got a problem there. And if we took a look at the bottom, we can see that this whole edge is just Swiss cheese, really. There's nothing really, nothing left. It's also very short, and it's very flat, you can see here. So what's happened is this front edge has actually turned itself upwards. It's actually come upwards. So, and eroded away to what it looks like now. Now the problem when they get this way is it's generally believed that the hoof and the sole grow from the shape of the coffin bone. So a coffin bone that is much more healthy and properly shaped will, with concavity to it here, will grow a concave hoof if trimmed correctly. And then ones like these, where it's very flat on the bottom and has a missing front edge, will not. It will grow a very deformed hoof. So whereas a bone like this, the good one, might grow a more, you know, proper hoof. You can see there, proper shape. The other one grows one that looks a little more like that. And the normal one, you can see there's a big difference. There's a lot of missing toe. This hoof is a lot shorter. It's a lot stubbier. And get the camera to focus on it. And the front edge here has been shaved down. Now this has actually been shaved down relatively appropriately for what's happened to this horse. But if we look at sort of the concavity of the bottom, there really isn't any. Now granted, when you go to boil these things and clean them out, it does sort of puff this part out a little bit, but it didn't look much different. I can say that for sure. I've got previous pictures of it as well. So you don't have any concavity. Now the other thing that it does, if we come back to our example here, is when you don't have, come on camera, when you don't have the coffin bone growing correctly and it's kind of turning, all of this stuff gets compromised because it's very flat and it isn't allowed to kind of grow down. So you get what happens, which is why horses with pedal osteitis tend to be very ouchy, because they have very little sole that they're able to grow down, just due to the physiological constraints of this bone structure. So a few important signs that you can see to recognize this kind of thing. One is you're going to find that there's going to be a very strange hoof shape. It's going to sort of go outwards rather than stay straight or even a little bit in. It'll be like a ski tip in a way. And that's just how this bone is growing. If you look here, if we can get this to kind of focus in a bit, we'll zoom in. We can see that the front edge here actually starts to turn upwards a little bit, and the bone will follow that. So that's a really tough thing for horses. They don't get along well with that. But this takes a lot of time to get this way. So that's a really quick introduction into pedal osteitis and what it looks like, both from the outside, where you get these really strange looking, short looking, ski tippy looking hoof walls, and then to what's actually happening on the inside, which means that you're very limited as to what kind of hoof you can grow down. So hopefully you guys have got something out of that. If you have any questions, ask me below, let me know. Feel free to look it up. There's lots of information on the internet about it. And it's a really important thing to understand, because you never know. Some of the older horses, if you get a horse, you go to buy a horse and somebody says, well, it doesn't cost much, you know, and you want to know. You do a vet check, or you have a farrier come in and properly check things over. And some of these older horses will look like this on the inside, and there won't be much to really resolve it. The bone doesn't grow back very well, if at all. At least not that has been shown yet. So understanding one of the things that can go wrong in hooves is incredibly useful. This is one of the more serious things, and I hope to just bring a little bit more awareness to the horse community through this channel for that. I will cover this in more detail. We'll talk about a little bit more of how this happens, why it happens. I mean, the short version is that the hoof doesn't get trimmed properly, and in time the capsule will sort of rotate around the skeletal structure, and the coffin bone will slowly start to, instead of being sort of maybe at that angle or so, it'll start to do this, and it has no choice but to erode or go through the sole of the hoof. So we'll talk about that more soon. This is just going to be a quick intro into this kind of thing that I can refer back to when I start to talk about certain things. But pedal osteitis is a big deal. Hopefully you guys can get a little bit of recognition of what it is when you go out and about. Check out your own horses or whatever you're doing. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to answer them. If I have the answer, I'll answer it. If I don't, I'll go look it up and find out. Anyway, so I'll see you guys in the next one, where we'll talk a little bit more about that pedal osteitis, hopefully, and hopefully get into some more details of the different parts of the hoof. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys again next time.